All right, let's go ahead and get started. So absolute value and inequality number 2. Okay, to solve an inequality, you have to work inside first, and then you kind of work your way out. So this -2 is really just along for the ride, -2, okay? Then you simplify inside. So -1 plus 5 is 4. Again, the -2 along for the ride. The absolute value of 4 is 4. So I'm going to change those absolute values to parentheses. -2 times 4 is -8. Let's try number 2. Exact same as number 1. So this says, what is the value of the absolute value of 1 minus a if a is equal to 12? Basic substitution. You're going to replace a with 12. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and substitute. So 1 minus 12. Well, 1 minus 12 is -11. The absolute, the absolute value of -11 is 11, which is C. Remember, don't overcomplicate absolute values. Just simplify inside and then take the absolute value of it. Now, number 3 is a really great question because it's a kind of problem that you all don't like. And I know that that seems mean, but honestly, I purposely want to give you problems that you hate because I want you to face your fears of why you don't like them. So this problem looks intimidating because there's no numbers, and it's rightfully intimidating. I mean, if you look at it, it is a lot of words, and you're like, math shouldn't have words, it should have numbers, and it has like none of that. But it's nothing that you can't do. So this says if x times y squared is less than 0, then which of the following statements must be true? So to start this problem, numbers that are less than 0, if a number is less than 0, that means that the number is negative. Okay, if a number is less than 0, it's negative. So we need to be thinking in terms of negatives and positives for this problem. So this problem, option A, says the value of x is negative. So let's go ahead and test that, and I'll write it right here. X, y squared is less than 0. X value is negative. So I'm just going to, I didn't mean to put a 1, I'm sorry. We're just going to put x is negative. We don't even, oh my goodness. All right, here we go. It's not going to be like last video. All right, x is negative, while the value of y is positive or negative, plus or minus, squared, less than 0. Remember, we're looking for the true value. So let's think about that. When I square a positive number, I will always get a positive number out. When I square a negative number, I will also get a positive. And if you raise a negative or positive to any even power, it will always be positive. So my negative is along for, there, we'll change it to a parenthesis. The negative is along for the ride. However, this answer, regardless of if it's positive or negative, when I square it, will always yield a positive answer. Well, a negative times a positive, we'll jump down here. A negative times a positive is a negative, and negative numbers are less than 0, making A correct. So when you have a problem like this and it's talking in terms of negatives, positives, negatives, if it's talking in terms like that, don't think of numbers, think of signs and what those signs represent. Number 4, for any real number A, solve or simplify 6a to the 5 raised to the 2. This is a great rule. So what we're going to do is distribute the 2. Remember, you are allowed to distribute the 2 because we're not adding or subtracting anything inside those parentheses. If we are, you can't do that. So 6 squared is 36, and I'm going to stop here. I can immediately cross out those 3. We should make sure that we are crossing out as we go. We want to make sure we're good test takers. 5 is being raised to the 2, which means I multiply. That's power to a power. 5 times 2 is 10, which is option D. Now, notice option B, they're trying to trick you. They want you to do 5 plus 2, which is 7. Not the same thing. Remember, a to the 5 times a to the 2 is a to the 7. A to the 5 raised to the 2 is the same thing as a to the 5 times a to the 5, which is a to the 10. So be mindful when you square something, you're multiplying it by itself, which in turn, I would be doing 5 plus 5. Number 5 is such a good problem because it looks so hard, okay? This problem looks difficult because they're not giving you the values of X and Y. Notice up here, scroll up real quick, they told you A is 12. Easy peasy, you just plug it in. 5, they make it a little harder because absolute value isn't necessarily a difficult concept. However, they're trying to make it hard by not giving you the variables for X and Y. So it's first important to notice that this goes up by ones here, but technically it goes by a half. This is a half. So if I want the value of Y, that's in between a half and 1, which is 0.75. Some of you on your practice made it 0.5 because you didn't pay attention. Be careful. They're doing it on purpose. Remember, they're paid to analyze your mistakes, and that is literally their job. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that you don't make those mistakes. So X is negative 7.5. You're looking for which inequality must be true. Basically, you do have to plug it into the question and simplify. So to save us time, I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in to C because C is the correct answer. The absolute value of negative 0.75 minus Y, which is positive 0.75, is greater than 1. So right here, I have negative 1.5 is greater than 1. Well, the absolute value of negative 1.5 is positive 1.5, and that is in fact greater than 1. Remember, you're looking for which one is true, so it is C. And as you kind of work through this, you'll see that C is the correct answer. If not, here is what I have on the answer key online if you want full in-depth. This is incorrect because you get less than 1, which is not true. This one is incorrect because it doesn't equal 1. This one's incorrect because it's not less than 1/2, and this one's incorrect because it doesn't equal a half. So the only one that is correct is C. All right, continuing on to number 6. Again, the ACT doesn't make you graph inequalities, but they do expect you to know how to read them because it is a multiple choice test. They do expect you to know how to read certain things. So for number 6, it says, which of the following inequalities represents the same set as the set graphed on the number line shown? First thing we should recognize is we have a closed circle at 0, closed at 0, open at 0. This is not 0. This is not 0. So right there, 50-50 chance. Okay, just by understanding I should have a closed circle at 0, which means less than or equal to. Then over here, I have an open circle at 3. This represents a closed circle. So it is out and E is correct. All you have to do is just analyze your choices. Analyze them. It's multiple choice. It's all about test-taking strategies. Okay, 7's a great problem too. 7 is a great problem, again, because they put A, B, C, D as points, not as values. So A is obviously 4, B is between -1 and -2, and then C is between -1 and 0, D is 1, and E is 1.5. You're looking for which one of these letters, when I graph this, will be shaded over. So the first thing I'm going to do is solve it. So that's an X. Negative X plus 1 is greater than 4. Then I must write the same thing, but flip the inequality and change the sign. So I'm going to go ahead, earring just fell out. We're going to go ahead and solve for X, subtracting 1. Negative X is greater than 3. Divide by -1. When I do that, I must flip the inequality. I have to flip the inequality. Then I'm going to go up to my problem and I'm going to go ahead and shade. So I'm going to come up here, open circle at 3. Values less than -3 are to the left, which I've shaded over A, which is option A. So the good thing about this problem is they didn't make like these values different. They didn't make like A equal to B. You know what I mean? So at least they did it kind of nice. It's still, a tricky question, but you don't even have to solve the rest of it. If you were to solve it, you would get X is greater than 5, which shades this direction. So you can stop after you solve the first one. Okay, the next problem is a very basic calculator question. Now, if you recognize fractions as decimals a little bit quicker, this might save you a little more time. But basically, you're looking for a number that will sit for X right in between those two. So 3/2 is 1.5 as a decimal. 2 halves is 2.5. You're basically looking for a number that's going to sit between those, okay? The square root of 9 is 3. Well, 3 halves is equal to 3 halves. I need one between because there's no equal sign. This is out. Now, one thing I want to make sure that we know, you can totally type that into your calculator. But if you are not using one of these, okay, if you're not using a TI-84CE, you will have to close parentheses. So the way that your calculator will do it, if you're using just an old 84, it's going to open a set of parentheses. You're going to have to close it, then divide by 2. If you don't, it's not going to give you the right answer. So just be careful. The square root of 20 over 2 is about 2.23. So notice how that is between. That's a good sign. Square root of 25 is 5. Well, 5 halves is 2.5, which is the same as this. So that's out. And all of these answers as you go are greater than 5 halves. We want the one between, which is B. So again, you could have stopped at B, but for the sake of the tutorial, I just want to make sure we know what we're doing. Okay, number 9 is a basic plug it into the problem question. So it is telling you that x is equal to 7. So anywhere I see x, I'm going to plug in 7. The absolute value of negative 2 times 7 minus 5 minus the absolute value of negative 4 plus 8. Just simplify as you go. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14 minus 5 minus parenthesis. Negative 4 plus 8 is 4. Negative 14 minus 5 is negative 19. The absolute value of negative 19 is 19. The absolute value of 4 is 4. 19 minus 4 is 15, which is option D. All right, let's continue on. Number 10 is such a good problem because it is tricky, okay? This problem is hard. So it wants to know for positive integers x and y, x plus y equals 21. What is the smallest possible value of x times y? So a lot of you, for some reason, I honestly don't know why, a lot of you were like, oh, well, I know that when I'm solving this here, I know that 17 plus 4 is equal to 21. And I honestly have no earthly idea why all of you started there, which it's fine to do. So let's start there. This is x, this is y. They add to equal 21. Now I want to multiply them. Well, 17 times 4, let's see here. I don't have that on my key. 17 times 4 is 68. And that's not an answer choice. What I would recommend is starting small. When I want to add two numbers to equal 21, I think of 20 plus 1. I mean, that's like the easiest I can think of. 20 plus 1 is 21. And then when you multiply 20 times 1, you get 20, which is an answer choice. But let's test it. Let's make sure that we're not thinking crazy here. What if I decrease x and increase y? Well, 19 times plus 2 is still 21. And when I multiply 19 times 2, I get 38, which is also an answer choice. But I'm looking for the smallest possible value. So as I increase these numbers, look here, this one is 68. As you increase the value and the difference between the two numbers, or as the difference gets closer together, like 4 gets closer to 17, 1 is pretty far away from 20, those values get bigger. We want the smallest. Well, 20 times 1 is always going to be 20. That's the smallest I can get. So my answer is B. All right, number 11 says t equals negative 7. What is the value of absolute value of t minus 2? So the absolute value of negative 7 minus 2. Negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. Notice again, they put negative 9 first here. Just be careful, absolute value. 12 is such a good problem because it is a pain. And you know, I understand that you hate hard problems, but here's the thing about the hard problems. They're hard because you don't understand them. So once we go over them in class, hopefully it makes them a little bit less difficult, makes them a little easier, I hope. So from here, It's giving you the values of X and Y that you're supposed to plug into this absolute value. However, it doesn't give you the values of X and Y. It gives you this fancy number line. So you have to know that A's value is between -3 and -4. So A is equal to -3.5. B is a little bit further than a half, so I would recommend -0.75. Remember, you're ballparking it. Okay, so B is about -7.5. C is obviously at 1. D is about in between 1 and 1.5. So D is about 1.25. E is clearly at 3, and F is clearly at 4. So these are the values of the variables. Now we get to the meat of the problem. So I would recommend writing on your number line. That's why this test is on paper. It's very helpful. Now, to test all these answers, to test answer choice A, you're going to use X's value equal to what A's value is, okay? So in this problem, we would replace X with A, and in turn, A equals -3.5. So we'd put that here. Y is equal to B. Well, B's value is -0.75, so we would replace Y with B's value. Now, the correct answer in this problem is answer choice C. So I'm going to jump to C's answer. So the absolute value of X in this answer choice, X is equal to C, and C is 1. Minus my Y value I would use as D. So D is 1.25 is less than a half. Okay, so from here, 1 minus 1.25 is just -0.25 less than a half. From here, I would get positive 0.25 less than a half. And since that's a decimal, we can go ahead and change that. A quarter as a fraction is 1/4. 1/4 is definitely smaller than a half. I would definitely rather have half of a sandwich than a quarter of a sandwich. Now remember, the larger the denominator is, the smaller the fraction because it's divided by more things. So the correct answer here is C. Okay, we're almost done. Number 13, if P and Q are real numbers such that P is greater than 5 and Q is greater than 4, what is the smallest integer larger than the product of P and Q? This problem is tricky because it is hard to think about, but we should think product means multiply, so I'm going to multiply P and Q. So let's make this an inequality. If I were to multiply P times Q, I would need to multiply 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. So I need a product greater than 20, which is 21. So setting it equal to what it could be will make this problem easier. Just multiply. P times Q has to be greater than 5 times 4, which is 20. The only number greater than 20 is E. Remember, you don't really need a lot of numbers here. You don't have to plug and chug and test it out. Just think logically. It takes some time, but it's nothing you can't do. All right, the last one, number 14. Number 14 is a great problem. So to make this a little bit clearer than what I did in class, I'm going to go ahead and just draw a number line. And when we went over this in class, nobody really had a question on it, but I think that it is a valid problem. So to analyze what I'm doing here, I'm going to show you the inequality. So right here, I get -1 is less than or equal to, so I'm going to close my parenthesis here, okay, or close my circle. X is less than 5, so I'm going to put open. And then I shade. Okay, so this inequality is represented in blue. Okay, this inequality is represented in blue. I'm looking for which inequality here does not overlap any of these blue values. When it says not share any values, that means these inequalities cannot overlap any blue. So all I'm going to do is just analyze my choices. Option B, X is greater than or equal to 5, or greater than -5, but less than or equal to -1. This portion right here means when I graph it, I also have to shade -1. Well, if I'm shading -1, that means it overlaps. -1 is in both. X is between 0 and 5. Well, numbers between 0 and 5 are located on that blue line. Notice how C through D are basically the same. Numbers between 0 and 5. I cannot use any of those numbers because they're included already on the blue. However, if we jump to the next one, this is saying X is less than -1, which means if I were to graph this independently, it would be an open circle. It does not include -1. And then it includes values that are, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Open circle. And then it goes to smaller values, to -5. So if I were to continue this number line, I would have a closed circle at -5, and then it would not connect at -1. So notice how there's no overlap here because this first one does not include -1, making the answer A.